Mercedes team boss Toto Wolff has stated that when the regulations develop, all strong F1 cars may wind up following Red Bull's design path. This has caused Mercedes to switch design paths and maybe choose the same design philosophy as Red Bull in their upcoming upgrades. Will we see the W14 being upgraded with even more Red Bull-like features? Red Bull has dominated the sport with its efficient and fast RB18 and 19 from the beginning of the ground effect regulation cycle in early 2022. While different teams brought a variety of concepts to the table at the start of 2022, more have sought to move closer to Red Bull's design philosophy, the most recent being McLaren, who took a significant step forward in pace after their Red Bull-esque upgrade package was introduced to the MCL60. With both Aston Martin and McLaren making significant strides forward in terms of pace in recent months, to the point where Mercedes customers are challenging the Mercedes team on track, Wolff downplayed the importance of adhering to the Red Bull philosophy in order to compete at the front, at least for now. Mercedes recently made a significant concept modification to their W14, abandoning the zero-pod concept that they had pursued since the beginning of the regulations, only to acknowledge defeat and reverse course ahead of the Monaco Grand Prix. But these changes could obviously be upgraded once again if a Red Bull-like sidepod design will provide Mercedes with a better aerodynamic platform. While the W14 is shown to be a more competitive beast in following races, they have yet to break away from the Ferrari, Aston Martin, and now McLaren struggle. The sidepods and the bodywork are just one part of the chassis, and clearly it looks like there are interesting solutions that it opens up, he told media after the British Grand Prix, when asked if the integration of design was likely over the next year or two. But most of the performance comes through the floor and the diffuser, and we haven't seen how they, talking about Red Bull, interpreted the regulations and how they've done it. So in my opinion, it's just the package. Wolff indicated that the best cars may begin to resemble one another over time. Maybe we'll see that the strong cars all look a little bit the same when you look from the side and from the top down, he said. That has played in our minds already back in the day, but maybe there's just a little more indication where it goes. While Wolff has previously doubted his team's potential to discover a silver bullet that might lift the W14 to RB19 contender status, McLaren's choice to secretly focus on a concept change with their MCL60 in order to significantly alter their car received Wolff's support. The basic difference between the Aston Martins, McLarens and the cars made by Mercedes, with the Mercedes power behind them, is aerodynamic competence, and Wolff claimed McLaren's breakthrough has given his team some food for thought. I think we've seen that major step that Aston Martin were able to bring, and now McLaren, he said. We've been fighting with the car for a year and a half, trying to add performance. It came in, but it's just chipping away at those small gains, rather than to do such a step. But I really see the positives because fundamentally, I don't care whether we finish second or third. It's important to find our way back to fighting for victories and in the World Championship. While podiums are really happy for us to see that the car has potential, fundamentally, all sights are on the big prize, and that's why it's exciting to see that McLaren was able to bring a second in performance. But how was it possible for Lando Norris to finish higher than Lewis Hamilton? After all, the McLaren driver, Lando Norris, was forced to use slower, harder compound tyres after a late safety car in the British Grand Prix. Mercedes driver Lewis Hamilton was on the quickest soft compound behind him. However, Hamilton stayed behind Norris until the checkered flag, finishing third. Norris finished second, while teammate Oscar Piastri finished fourth, giving the team their best finish of the season. This is mostly due to McLaren's enhancements in both the Austrian and British Grand Prix. This prompted Mercedes, which had lately received enhancements, to seek solutions to found speed. Technical Director James Allison recently indicated that the crew located in Brackley will keep an eye on McLaren. After all, they've been able to gain incredible amounts of race pace with one significant upgrade, while using the Mercedes PU. We keep an eye on all the teams as they upgrade, Allison commented. We take lots of photos and we try and figure out what changes from race to race. Allison continued saying, "We note when something new or unusual comes along. The interesting and unusual thing about the McLaren upgrade is that its lap time effect is quite strong. It's unusual to have a step of that size of relative competitiveness in the middle of a season, and chapeau to them. They've done a good piece of work there. But that also makes it interesting for us because we have the before and after shots, and we know the lap time effect was big. So it's well worth us paying more attention than we normally might to another competitor team's upgrades, because in this case, we know that whatever changed has made a meaningful difference to their lap time." It's quite useful for us to know what that was, and see whether it can play into our own thoughts of developing our own car. Toto Wolff has praised the Woking-based squad despite keeping a close watch on them. Mercedes team principal described McLaren's progress as encouraging. The advancements demonstrate what can be accomplished in F1, particularly in a single season. Fair enough, they had much more wind tunnel time to come with upgrades that change completely the performance of the car. We're not speaking about 0.2 up and down, we're speaking about a second. But that's good for the sport, Toto claimed. It shows that you do the right things, you put 1 and 1 together. We've seen it with Aston Martin from year to year, and we've seen it with McLaren now during the year. I like it. McLaren has a wind tunnel time edge over Mercedes this season. However, Wolff argues that this is not the only cause for McLaren's revival of speed. He stated, "I don't want to say that the reason for performance is in more wind tunnel time. I think it's just good engineering and good decisions put well together on the right track. We need to see whether they can repeat that performance in Budapest, which is obviously the opposite in what you need." Following what appears to be a 4-team competition for second, it's unclear which team will take the runners-up slot the following time out in Hungary. Will McLaren continue to improve, or will Mercedes strike back? And what about the upcoming season? Can Mercedes really allow themselves to keep their focus on the current season without losing out at the start of the next one? Mercedes' George Russell says he's not concerned about other teams already shifting their emphasis to 2024. With a summer break coming for the 2023 F1 season, the teams will all begin to consider the moment at which they'll shift their emphasis totally away from 2023 development to concentrate on next year's package. Depending on their degree of competition, certain teams, like as Red Bull, may have already begun development on next year's machines, giving them a potentially enormous edge as their competitors focus on their 2023 struggles. Given that the 2024 regulations are essentially unchanged from the 2023 regulations, which were only a tweak of the initial regulations introduced for the return of ground effect in 2022, George Russell isn't concerned that Mercedes will fall behind as they continue to develop their 2023 car. When asked if there is cause for concern as Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren and Aston Martin can shift their focus to 2024 and potentially steal a march on Mercedes as a Brackley-based team continues to work on unlocking the potential of the W14's new concept, Russell said the switch-over point is not as significant as it was 2 years ago. No, not really, because I think with the stable regulations between this year and next year, the cars kind of roll into next season anyway, he told media. Obviously, in the season of 2021, when you've got this new big change, there were concerns in regards to that. This year, we will finish the season with a car that has been an evolution into the following year. Russell was asked how he's been working on attempting to achieve consistency, with Mercedes' results being rather erratic, occasionally the quickest team behind Red Bull, and occasionally falling short of the likes of Ferrari and Aston Martin, and McLaren at Silverstone. I think it's important sometimes not to overthink things. Go back to the basics and work on the processes with the team, he said. What I need as a driver to maximise my performance, what I'm looking for with the car. Just not overthinking things sometimes. I know that if I tick all those boxes, I can beat anybody on this grid, and I think it's important that you do tick those boxes. We often fall into a trap of wanting to do more and work on finer details, work even harder. But sometimes you overcomplicate things and it's counterproductive. So it's striking that right balance because I'm always striving for more, pursuing more, but sometimes you can't overwork and it's going to hinder your performance. So that's George Russell's view on next year's car and the current upgrades. But what about Lewis Hamilton? What's on his mind? Does he think Mercedes will be able to provide him with a championship-worthy car? Last year was very, very, very hard, the Briton said. I can't even put words on how difficult it was for the team. The car was just... I can't say anymore. And obviously the work we've done in terms of towards the end of the year. Obviously we had a good race in Brazil, but then to start this year again, kind of on the back foot, it's definitely been a much more positive year for us. I think we've made bigger strides. We've had some good results on the podium. It's really hard to predict where we're going with the steps that we're starting to take. We have a new wing this weekend, so it's not a huge update, but people work so hard just for that wing, so I'm hoping that it helps us take a step in the right direction. Bit by bit, as we bolt on these things, the car's becoming more and more of a race car. Look, if we're competing like last year towards the end of this season, on one side, that's a good thing. On another, the other teams will have probably switched off and focused on the next year. I really don't care what position I finish in this year. I'm just focused on trying to give the best development information for the team. working with the guys to make sure we steer this car in the right way. And when we start the first race, or the first test next year, we hit the ground running. We don't have bouncing. We have the rear downforce we need, and the car's efficient, and we can keep up with everybody. That's my dream. So I'm looking further down the road, Hamilton concluded. What are your thoughts? Do you see Mercedes switching their aero package to be a more Red Bull-esque design? And what about Russell and Hamilton? Will they be able to challenge for race wins later this season, and perhaps from the start of next season? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below.